In this video, I will show you how to create a to-do list application using ReactJS and Bootstrap. So here we can create new tasks, then add. Let's create one more task, then add. Then we can change the task states. So we can check or uncheck this box. And we can delete tasks. So we can delete this task, for example. Let's also delete this task. Let's create another task. Let's change its states. And when we refresh the browser, we still have the to-do list. This is because this to-do list is saved into the local storage of the browser. Now let's create a new React application. So we can create it in this folder, and we need to open the command prompt from this folder. So just here we can write cmd. Then we need to write npx space create react app. Then the name of the application, we can call it to-do app. Let's press enter. Now the application is created correctly. So let's close this window. And here we have the folder of our new application. So let's open it. And let's delete the Git folder to get rid of the Git notifications. Now let's open this folder using VS Code. And to run this application, we need to open the terminal. And here we have to write npm start. And we obtain this initial application. Now let's delete useless files. So we can delete all the files of the source folder except index.js. Then let's update index.js. So let's delete the useless import statements. And let's delete all of this code. Then let's create the app component that is rendered just here. We can create the app component in this file. And let's return a JSX element. So we can return a fragment that contains the title of the application. Now let's save the file. And we obtain this interface. So now let's add Bootstrap to our application. So here we can write Bootstrap. Then let's go to the first link. Then docs. Then we need to add Bootstrap CSS and JavaScript from the CDN. So let's copy this code. And let's add it to the head element of our application. So let's go to public, then index.html. Then just after the title, we can paste the code. So this allows us to add Bootstrap CSS from the CDN. Now we need to add Bootstrap JavaScript. So let's copy this code. And let's add it at the end of the body element. So let's paste it just here. Then let's add Bootstrap icons from the CDN. So here we can click on icons. Then let's copy this line. And let's paste it at the end of the head element. Now let's save the file and let's close it. And now we can use Bootstrap classes. So just here let's add some Bootstrap classes. So we want to display this text in the center. And you can also add a bottom border. Let's save the file. So here we can see that the text is in the center and we have this bottom border. Now let's create a new component that will be our to-do list. So let's create a new file in the source folder and let's call it TodoList.js. Then let's create and export the component. Let's return a JSX element. So let's return a div. And let's add some Bootstrap classes. So this div will be a container and let's add some top and bottom margin. Then inside this div, let's create a new div. Let's add some Bootstrap classes. So we will display this div in the center of the page and we will add a rounded border and also we will add some paddings. Then let's add some CSS style. So here let's add the style attribute. So it will be equal to a JavaScript object. So we need to add the first brackets, then the second brackets. Then we need to define the width of this div and the background color. So we need to define two properties. We need to define the width, it can be 600 pixels, and the background color, and we can use this background color. Then let's add the title of this page. So we can write my to-do list, and let's add some Bootstrap classes. So we can display the text using the white color because we have this background color. We can display the text in the center of the page, and here we have some bottom margin. Now let's save this file and let's render this component in the page. So here we can delete the h2 element and let's replace it with the to-do list component. Let's press enter to import it. Let's save the file. And we obtain this interface. So now let's add an input field and a submit button to this interface. We can find the source code on the documentation website of Bootstrap. So here we need to find the navbar. So let's select it from here. And let's copy the source code of this input field and this submit button. So we need to copy this form. Let's paste it after the title. Let's replace class with class name. So we can select class equal, then Ctrl-Shift-L, then class name equal. So here we have this error because every JSX element should be closed. So we can close it just here. So let's add slash. Let's save the file. Then we don't need the role. We can delete it. Here we don't need the type, we can also delete it. Let's delete area label. Then here let's change the color of this button. So instead of success we can write light. And in the placeholder of this input element, instead of writing search, we will write new task. Also let's change the text of this button. So let's write add. So when we submit the form, we need to read the content of the input element. And to be able to read the content of this input element, we need to provide it with a name. So just here, let's add the name attribute. And let's call it task. And to be able to read the form data when we submit the form, we need to add the onSubmit handler. So we need to add it in the form element. And it is equal to a function. So we can create a new function and we can call it handleSubmit. Now let's implement this function. So we can implement it just here. It requires a parameter, we can call it event. So when we submit the form, we will read the form data in this function. But first we need to prevent the browser from submitting any data to the server. So just here at the beginning we have to call event.preventDefault. Then let's read the content of this input element. So let's create a variable. Let's call it task. And it is equal to event.target. So target here is this form, but we need to read the content of this input field. And this input field is called task. So here we have to add .task. So task means this input field, but we need to read the content of this input field. So here we have to add .value. So this task will be the content of this input element. And now we can display an alert with the content of this variable. Let's save the file. And let's create a new task. Let's click on add. So here we have this alert, we have new task, and this is the content of this input element. So when we submit the form, we need also to clear this input element. So just here we have to call event.target.reset. So target is this form and reset allows us to reset the form. Let's save the file. Let's click on add. And you can see that the form has been reset. So now when we create a new task, we need to add it into a list. So first we need to create a state. We can create it just here. Let's call it TODOs. And the function that allows us to update this variable, we can call it setTodos. So to create this state, we have to use the function useState. Of course, we need to import this function, which has been done by VS Code. And then let's provide the initial value of this variable. So this variable is an array of tasks. So here we can create an array, which is empty for the moment. And we can fill it with one object, which will be our first task. So this is a JavaScript object, and we can define some properties. So the first property we can call it task. And the value we can write, for example, my first task. Then let's define another property which will be of type Boolean. We can call it completed. And initially it is false. Now let's render the content of this array. So we can display the different tasks just after the form. So just here we will add a JavaScript expression. So let's add brackets. And we need to create a new array using the array called TODOs. So to do this, we have to call TODOs, which is our array, then .map. So the map function allows us to create a new array using the initial array. And you have to provide the map function with a function that will be executed for every element of the first array. So this function that we will provide to the map function can be an arrow function. It accepts 1 or 2 parameters. So we can provide it with a to-do, which is one task from this array, then comma, then index, which will be the position of this element in this array. So for every element of this array, we will return a JSX element. It is of type div. So because this is a JSX element into an array, we have to provide it with a unique key. So just here, let's add the key attribute. And the unique value that we have is this index, which is the position of this element into the array. So just here we can write index. Then let's add some Bootstrap classes. So this div will be rounded. We have some top margin, we have paddings, and we can use deflex like this. When we create two divs inside this div, they will be displayed on the same line. Then we can add a background color. So let's add the style attribute. It is equal to a JavaScript object. Then we need to set the background color property. So we can use this background color if the task is completed. So let's format this a little bit. So if the task is completed, we can use this background color, otherwise we can use another background color. To check if the task is completed or not, we can use this to-do variable. So just here let's write to-do dot completed, which is a Boolean value. So if it is completed, then the background color will be this color. Otherwise, we can use this background color. So here completed is one property of the to-do object that we have just here. So completed is initially false. Then inside this div, we can create 2 additional divs. And we can provide this div with all the available space. So just here let's add class name, then me like margin and hyphen auto. So this div will take all the free space. And just after this div, we need to create another div. So let's copy this, let's paste it here, and let's delete the class name. So in the first div, we can display the task. So just here, let's write brackets, then to do dot task, which is the task of this object. So here we have task and completed. Let's save the file. So here we have our first div, which contains our first task. We have this background color because this task is not completed. And to compare a completed task with a non-completed task, we can add a new task into our state array. So let's copy this object. And let's add it just here. Let's call it my second task. And here completed will be true. Let's save this. And now we have 2 tasks. This is not completed and this task is completed. Now we can add 2 icons. One icon that allows us to change the states of the task and another icon that allows us to delete the task. We can find the icons on the documentation website of Bootstrap. So here let's type trash and let's copy the source code of this icon. So let's copy this. Let's paste it here. And let's replace class with class name. Then we need another icon. So here we can write check. And you can copy the source code of this icon. So let's copy this. And let's paste it here. Then let's change class with class name. So if the task is completed, we can use the check square. If it is not completed, we can use only square. So we can cut this code. Let's add brackets. And let's check the states of the task. So here let's write todo.completed. If it is completed, then we can use this icon. Otherwise, we can use the square alone. So let's delete this. Let's save the file. So here we can see that the square is not checked and this square is checked. Now we can increase the size a little bit and we can add some space between these 2 icons. So just here let's add additional Bootstrap classes. So we can put all of this between parentheses. Then let's add some Bootstrap classes. So first let's increase the size so we can use the h5 class. Then let's add some space between this first icon and the second icon. So let's add me like margin and, then 2 for example. Then we need to concatenate the 2 string values. So here let's add plus. And of course here we have to add a space, otherwise this class will be concatenated with this class. So this space is very important. Then for the second icon we can display it using the red color. So let's add text danger. And let's increase its size a little bit. Let's save the file. So here we can see that we have some space and the second icon is displayed using the red color. Now when we add a new task, we want to display it in this list. So when we submit a new task, we need to add it to this state. But first let's check if we have a valid task or not. So let's cut this. Let's add an if condition. So if task is empty, so if not task, then we can display an alert. Then we can exit the handle submit function. Otherwise, we will add this task to this array. So here let's call setToDos. Then we need to provide the new array. So because this array is of type read only, we need to make a copy of this array and we need to add the new task. So first let's make a copy of the array. So let's add brackets, then we will use the spread operator, then todos. Then let's add a new element to this array. So the element that we will add will be of type JavaScript object. So let's add brackets. Then let's define the task and the completed properties. So task will be equal to this variable, which is called task as well. Then completed will be initially false. Let's save the file. And let's create a new task. Then add. So here we can see that we have this task. The input field is empty and this task is initially not completed. That's why we have this background color. And if we click on add while the input field is empty, we have this alert. Now let's implement the function that allows us to update the task states. So when we click on this icon, we want to reverse the task states. If it was completed, it becomes not completed. And if it was not completed, it becomes completed. Also, when we put the cursor on this icon, we want to have the hand cursor. So this is the first icon. First, let's add the style attribute. And let's define the cursor property. And the value is pointer. Then let's implement the onClick handler. So when we click on this icon, we want to reverse the task states. So we can call a function called change task states. Then we need to provide this function with the index of the task into the todos array. So here the index will be this variable. Then let's implement this function. We can implement it just here. So first let's make a copy of the todos array, which is this state. Then let's reverse the task having this index. So we have to write new todos of index dot completed, and the value will be the opposite value. So we can copy this. Let's add exclamation mark and let's paste the variable. Then we will call setTodos to set the new value of this array. So the new value will be new todos. Now let's save the file. So when we put the cursor on this icon, we can see that we have this hand cursor. And when we click on it, we can see that the states has been reversed. Let's click again. Now let's implement the function that allows us to delete a task. So also when we put the cursor on this icon, we want to have the hand cursor. So this is the second icon. And here we need to add the style attribute. And also we need to implement the onClick handler. So when we click on the second icon, we need to delete the task. So here let's call a function called delete task. And let's implement it. So we can implement it just here. So first let's make a copy of the to-dos array. We can copy this. Let's paste it here. Then let's delete the task having this index. So we can use the splice function. So this function accepts two parameters, the first element that we want to delete and the number of elements that we want to delete. In our case, we want to delete only one element having this index. So here let's write index. Then the second parameter will be 1, which means only one element that we want to delete. Then let's set the new value of the to-dos array. So we can copy this and let's paste it here. Let's save the file. So let's delete this task and you can see that it has been deleted. Let's delete this as well and it has been deleted. But if we refresh the page, we have the initial list of tasks. So now I will show you how to read the tasks from the local storage of the browser and how to save the tasks into the local storage. So when we render the component for the first time, we need to initialize this array from the local storage. So here let's create a new function. Let's call it getStoredToDos. Then let's read the data from the local storage. So let's create a variable, let's call it data, and it is equal to localStorage.getItem. So we need to provide this function with the name of the item. So let's suppose that we have an item called todos. So this function returns a string, and we need to convert it into a JSON object. So let's create a new variable, let's call it JSON, and it is equal to JSON.parse, and we will provide this function with this string. Then let's check if we have a valid JSON object or not. So if we have a valid JSON object, we will return it. Otherwise, we will return an empty array. Then let's call this function to initialize the to-dos array from the local storage. So now when we render this component for the first time, the to-dos array will be initialized from the local storage. And also each time we update the to-dos array, we need to save the new value of the to-dos array into the local storage. So we can use the useEffect hook. So here let's call useEffect. Let's press enter to import it. And here it requires two parameters. The first parameter will be an arrow function. So this function will save the to-dos array into the local storage. So here let's write localStorage.setItem. And we need to provide it with two parameters, the name of the item and its value. So the name will be todos, and the value will be the string value of this array. So here let's add JSON.stringify, and let's provide this function with this array. Then we need to execute this function only when the todos array is updated. So let's add a second parameter, which will be the dependencies of this function. And here we have only one dependency, which is this state. So each time we update this state, we will call this function. Let's save the file. So initially the to-dos list is empty. Let's take a look on the local storage. Let's select local storage, then our domain. So here we can see that initially todos is empty. This has been executed when we called useEffect. And now let's create a new task. Then add. So we can see that the local storage has been updated and we have only one task. Let's change the states of this task. And now we can see that completed is equal to true. So each time we update the to-dos array, it will be saved into the local storage. Let's add a new task. Then add. So now here we have 2 tasks. And in the local storage we have also 2 tasks. Let's refresh the page. And you can see that our list of to-dos is initialized from the local storage.